The night was thick with tension in Tehran. The year was 1953. In the shadows of safe houses and embassies, men whispered of plans that would shake a nation. A democratically elected leader, admired by his people, was about to be targeted, not by local rivals, but by the world's most powerful intelligence agencies. Cash was moving, agents were deployed. And most importantly, the propaganda machines were cranked to full volume. This wasn't just a political coup. It was the prototype for what we now call a cybercrime documentary. Today, we see regime changes happen through phishing attacks, social media bot farms, and deepfake disinformation. But before the internet, there was Operation Ajax. It was a masterclass in social engineering, financial fraud, and psychological warfare. What happened in the streets of Tehran 70 years ago didn't just change the map of the Cold War. It laid the digital blueprint for the cyber threats we fight today. Before we crack open this classified file, let me ask you, where are you watching this from? And what time is it? I love seeing how far these digital mysteries reach. If you thrive on uncovering the hidden battles of history and the tech that drives them, hit that subscribe button. These files drop often. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, back to Tehran, 1953, a city on the edge of chaos, and a leader named Mohammad Mossadegh standing firm against the might of empires. At the heart of this conflict was something more valuable than data: oil. For decades, the Anglo-Iranian oil company, which we know today as BP, had been draining Iran's wealth. They were leaving the locals with scraps. In 1951, Mossadegh did the unthinkable. He nationalized the oil industry. Imagine a modern tech giant having its entire server infrastructure seized by a local government. That was the scale of the shock. In London, this was seen as a direct assault. But the world was changing. Direct military intervention was too loud. They needed a quiet solution. Initially, the United States was hesitant, but as the Cold War tightened, the lens shifted. Washington began to fear that Mossadegh's independence would push Iran into the Soviet orbit. Enter Operation Ajax, spearheaded by CIA officer Kermit Roosevelt Jr., the grandson of Teddy Roosevelt. This was a covert operation built on three pillars: disinformation, bribery, and brute force. Roosevelt entered Tehran with suitcases literally stuffed with cash. In the digital age, this is the equivalent of a major financial fraud operation. He wasn't just buying loyalty. He was buying the network. He bribed journalists to print fake stories. Sound familiar? It was the 1,950 seconds version of a coordinated bot attack. He painted Mossadegh as a communist sympathizer, an unstable dictator, and a threat to Islam. This was social engineering on a national scale. By the time the public knew what was happening, the system had already been compromised from the inside. The mechanics of the coup were both crude and sophisticated. They used hired mobs. Think of this as a distributed denial of service, or DDoS attack. But with people, one group was paid to protest for Mossadegh, acting so violently that the public would turn against him. Another group was paid to protest against him. The goal was to create so much noise and chaos that the average citizen couldn't tell fact from fiction. This is exactly how modern dark web scams operate. They create a false sense of urgency and chaos to force a target into a bad decision. By August 19th, 1953, the payload was delivered. Tanks and soldiers, loyal to the coup, stormed Tehran. Mossadegh's house was surrounded and shelled. He surrendered, was arrested, and the Shah was reinstalled as an absolute ruler. The CIA and MI6 celebrated it as a master stroke. But in the world of cybersecurity, we have a term for this. Blowback? When you use a zero-day exploit to take down a target, you leave a trail. And that trail leads to a hardened, more dangerous enemy. The Iranians never forgot. The anger simmered for decades, directly feeding into the 1979 revolution. When the Shah was eventually toppled, the new regime didn't just reject the West. They learned from it. They built their own shadow machinery. Today, the battle for Iran has moved from the streets to the fiber optic cables. Iran is now home to some of the world's most sophisticated state-sponsored hacking groups. Organizations like Charming Kitten and APT-35 use the same tactics Kermit Roosevelt used in 1953. But digitized. They use phishing attacks that target high-value diplomats. They run disinformation campaigns that use AI-generated social media profiles. So, what can we as digital citizens learn from this original hack? First, verify the source. Just as Iranians were tricked by bribed newspapers, we are often targeted by fake news and spoofed emails. Always check the headers of an email and the credibility of a news source. Second, understand the danger of backdoors. The West installed the Shah as a backdoor to Iranian oil. Eventually, that backdoor was slammed shut and locked from the other side. In tech, backdoors always represent a future vulnerability. Finally, maintain financial vigilance. Operation Ajax was fueled by untraceable cash. Today, it is crypto ransomware. Use multi-factor authentication on all financial accounts to ensure your suitcases of cash don't disappear in the night. The coup of 1953 was the blueprint for regime change in the 20th century. It was a prototype that combined disinformation, bribery, and force. These tactics are now the bread and butter of modern cyber warfare. The story of Mohammad Mossadegh is a reminder that when empires operate in the shadows, the consequences last for generations. The hidden hand of espionage in 1953 is the same hand clicking send on a malicious payload in 2025. History doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes in binary code. I am the digital sleuth. Stay curious. Stay skeptical. And above all, stay secure. Would you like me to analyze the cyber tactics used in the 1979 revolution next? Or should we dive into a more recent dark web mystery? Let me know in the comments.